Okay, my name is Adrian Bauman. I am the editor of the Mendocino Voice, and we are attempting again to get the live stream for the Ukiah City Council Candidates Forum going. Can you tell me if we are live, Kate? We are live. We are live to Facebook. Okay. Thanks everybody for bearing with me. I apologize for those technical delays. That was a little bit of frustration, and you're all very good sports for bearing with us during that, both the audience and the people participating in the debate. Now I'm going to hand it off to Casey Meadows, editor of the Ukiah Daily Journal.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our forum to meet the candidates for Ukiah City Council. I'm Casey Meadows, editor of the Ukiah Daily Journal, and I'll be your moderator this evening. This forum represents a long tradition in that the Ukiah Daily Journal, along with the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition and the American Association of University Women, have hosted candidate forums in local elections for the past 25 years. Voters in the Ukiah Valley are used to filling up the Ukiah City Council chambers to hear the candidates up close and personal and to ask the questions on their minds. We're proud of our history and our track record. Now in 2020, it's a different world and a brand new experience. We have joined forces with the Mendocino Voice to continue this tradition in the modern way via Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Adrian Bauman, editor of the Mendocino Voice, is our tech host. He gets all the credit for bringing these candidates from their homes right into yours and for bringing your questions to the candidates. We invite you to use the comment section of Facebook and YouTube to send in your questions. They'll be relayed directly to me, and I'll ask as many as possible during the 90 minutes we have. If you have already sent us your questions, and I have a couple of dozens already, we have them and we thank you. There are 7 candidates for 2 seats on the Ukiah City Council. The 2 incumbents are Doug Crane and Steve Scalmanini. The 5 challengers are Ed Donovan, Josefina Duenas, Cameron Ramos, Brian Erickson, and Jenny Kimbler. Mr. Erickson and Ms. Kimbler were unable to join us tonight, but the remaining candidates are all here, so let's get going. Okay, candidates, here are the rules. They're very simple. You will each have 1 minute to make an opening statement and 1 minute for a closing statement. In between, you will have 1 minute to answer each question. Adrian will be our timer. As you know, he can mute your microphone, but he will give you fair warning before taking a drastic action. You will see that candidate Josefina Duenas, who has a hearing disability, has her daughter with her to assist her. I should note, for any of you who desire a closed captioning option, it's provided through YouTube, although I'm not entirely sure that it's working right now. So let's get started. I will begin each round of questioning with a different candidate each time, but I will keep you in the same order of rotation so that we don't get too mixed up. So let's get started with opening statements, and we'll start with Mr. Scalmanini.
Okay, I hopefully am unmuted now. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Scalmanini. I am a 7-year veteran of the City Council and a 21-year resident of the community here in Ukiah after a career for a few decades in Silicon Valley. I'm a retired engineer there. And I am running to continue what I started in 2003 of bringing as much breadth of information and experience and judgment to the issues that brought before us on the City Council. And I would like to continue doing that for the community. I am available by my website, scalmanini-2020.com. And anyone can reach me at my email address, scalmanini@yahoo.com.
Thank you, Mr. Scalmanini. Mr. Donovan.
Thanks to the Ukiah Daily Journal and Mendo Voice for hosting this. My name is Ed Donovan. I've lived here in the county for about 15 years. I moved here in 2006. And I've either been working for other wineries in the county or making wine myself for about the last 5 years. And for those same 5 years, I've lived in the city of Ukiah. And I'm running to bring a fresh perspective. We've got very tough economic times ahead with COVID. But at the same time, I see changes in our community happening in terms of young people moving here, different people moving here. And I think we have exciting times ahead. And I want to be part of moving Ukiah forward, both culturally and economically. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Me llamo Josefina Dueñas. My name is Josefina Dueñas. La razón por la que estoy corriendo para esta carrera, esta política de este año, es porque quisiera ver grandes cambios en nuestra ciudad. The reason why I am running this time is because I would like to see so many good changes in our city. Es un honor para mí el poder representar a la comunidad latina. This is an honor for me to can represent the Latino community. Permítame decirle que soy una persona sorda legalmente casi desde que nací. Y aún así he tratado de hacer lo mejor por mi comunidad. Let me tell you, I have been deaf almost since I was born. Even with my disability, I have been trying to help my community.
That's time. That's time.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
We cannot hear you. You're muted.
I was thinking you undid that. My apologies.
We're good.
All right. In 16 years on the council, I brought successful business leadership and infrastructure experience to the council. In that time, council and the staff have evolved a more effective plan and accomplishment improvements in the city's electrical, water, wastewater systems, financial operations, and land use, to mobilize grant and low-cost funds for economic development, sustainability, and to accomplish state-mandated tasks. With voters' agreement, public safety and street funding have been augmented and coordinated to optimize public safety operations, repair and reconstruction of streets and utilities. Updated general plan, sphere of influence, adoptions of city ordinances and processes to comply with changing
That's time.
regulations are underway.
Time.
All right, thank you all. Okay, we're going to start the questioning now, and again, I'm going to start with the same list with Mr. Scalmanini. It seems that the council almost always votes to approve projects and rate settings recommended by staff. Do you feel that as a council member, you have a responsibility to independently research those matters rather than simply defer to the recommendations of staff? And we'll start with Mr. Scalmanini.
You're muted.
Okay, start that again. Apologies. I think the answer to the question is in the work I've already done and documents that I've produced showing alternates or alternatives to what is being brought to us by staff. Now, the specific example I'll bring up there is the garbage rates, which were changed about 3 years ago. And at that time, we were told by staff that we had to charge the same for everyone. We could no longer do discounts for smaller cans, the 20-gallon can, 10-gallon cans versus the standard 32-gallon can. I was the one that produced the documents that showed a year or two later that every city in Santa Rosa has a significant discount for smaller cans. Typical me to document. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's just an issue of how much work are we going to do in terms of being on city council. And I think it goes without saying that I'm going to take a fresh look at every aspect of our budget, including rates, with an eye towards equity. And looking at our city's priorities and deciding, you know, where our limited funds are best going to be used. And yes, I'll be taking a fresh look beyond the recommendations of staff for all of that. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Duenas.
You're
Okay.
muted.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm being told that I forgot to allow Mr. Ramos's opening. Is that, did we forget somebody?
Yeah, Cameron did not get an opening statement.
Sorry, Mr. Ramos. Why don't we do that right now before we move on?
Perfect. Thank you. So first off, I did just want to thank the Mendocino Voice and the Ukiah Daily Journal and this forum. I think it's so important for our local constituents to be able to ask these questions and hear our answers and see us as people. I'm a 21-year-old Ukiah native. I'm currently doing real estate because I believe that Ukiah is one of the best and most beautiful places to live. A few reasons that I'm running, even though Ukiah is beautiful and one of the best places to live, it can always be better. And I really want to be a part of making it better. I want to increase representation and participation in underrepresented groups. And I want to encourage everyone, including young people as myself, that this stuff really is able to be participated in. You're able to participate in your local government by reaching out to your local council members, your county supervisors.
We're at time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos, and I apologize for skipping you earlier. We'll go back to the questions. And just to review on the question, we're talking about whether as a council member, you're going to just sort of vote for the recommendations or staff, or do you feel like you will be researching independently the things that are brought before the council? And we're up to Ms. Duenas.
Una de las razones por las cuales estoy corriendo es porque me gustaría saber más acerca de todas las cosas que están por ser aprobadas. The reason why I am running is because I would like to research more before signing for everything. I would like to be more able to understand why we have reached that to that place, signing yes or not. That's what I would like to do. Research more.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
All right, it is unmuted. The council is in charge of what staff undertakes. And there are generally discussions leading to the recommendations that staff makes. So from my point of view, staff is responsive or is to be responsive to the council for solutions. And it is not a matter of they bring them to us for us to vote yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
Perfect. If I understand the question correctly, I would say that, even though there is a recommendation, I would definitely do as much research into any voting matter that there is. That's really important. And I think that making an informed decision on everyone's behalf that I'm representing as a council member would be my job as a council member. So yes, I would say that I'm definitely going to be putting a lot of research into things beyond.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will start with Mr. Donovan. What distinguishes an outstanding city council member from a competent one?
Well, I think just going off that last question, we're going to need to be not only, showing up for meetings and dealing with agendas, we're going to need to be creative. We're going to need to be poised and responsive. Over this next year, for example, our budget situation is going to be largely dictated by state and national forces. And the extent we start seeing some federal and state funding, whatever forms it comes in, we need to be poised and ready to jump on as much of it as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Duenas.
Pienso que lo que distingue a las personas en la política es esa capacidad de entenderse, de darse a querer hasta cierto punto con la gente a la que está representando. I believe that what makes you to be a useful candidate is that capacity that the person has to make a bridge between you and the people you are serving. That's my question. That's my response.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
The council is responsible for, the members of the council are responsible for not just attending meetings. They need to be educated in the moving pieces, the fixed pieces. What agencies do we have to comply with? What agencies do we have to cooperate with? And how do we utilize the resources that are typically raised locally for the ongoing operation of government? Grants come for things above and beyond, like augmenting sewer treatment plant, putting in more wells, major improvements to electrical distribution. The time it takes for someone, in my opinion, to competently do those tasks averages about 20 hours a week. And if that sort of effort is not invested, it is initially, it's
That's
a
time.
lot.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
I would say an outstanding council member would be very in touch with their community, doing a lot of community outreach, seeing a lot of what the people there representing want. There's going to be a lot of change that we're going to see within the next year. And I think that's really important that an outstanding council member is adaptable and is able to roll with those changes easily. And, as Mr. Crane said, educated. I think that you need really to be understanding why things have happened the way that they've happened previously and how we can move forward from those and how we can make them better for the people who live.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
Okay. In my opinion, to be competent, you just need to do the research so you know what you're talking about at meetings, where you can defend what information you have and also confront, if necessary, what you're told, which does not seem to be true. And that does happen sometimes. And if you follow the meetings, you certainly heard me saying such things in meetings. So to really be effective and be an outstanding contributor to the council, you need to have done your homework and be able to contribute to the conversation and not just be anxious to hurry and move whatever staff has defined as the recommended action.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. This will start with Ms. Duenas. And the question is, what is your opinion of the structure of city administration? Is it top heavy in personnel or costs?
There's a slight delay while Ms. Dueña's daughter translates due to her hearing problem.
Perdón, tenía que entender primero la pregunta. I believe that, honestly, this is the first time I am running. And I believe that I have to research more about the staff and everything. I am willing to do so. And my hope is to be able to understand each one of the people who are working closely in there. So have a team. Oh, no me está pasando.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
Top heavy? No. The top staff works a lot more than their 40 hours. They bring a lot of knowledge. They would be very difficult to replace for the skill sets. Is it more money than I would like to see expended for those functions? Yes. But the choice is to have less capacity and less competency.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
I would have to agree. I would say I'm not very overly knowledgeable about the subject, but I would say that I see the city is running pretty well. And as a person who has previously worked for a city program, I think that I've seen that it takes everybody that the city does have to run the way that it does.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
I am not particularly convinced that the staff or the management of the city and the structure of the city is top heavy, but I do hear it questioned occasionally from people in the city, from residents. I keep an eye on the issue to see if we're really getting our money's worth from the breadth of top staff and management. But I wouldn't say make a stand on the issue that we are top heavy at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
I was just taking a look at some of the top salaries in the city while I was waiting my turn. You know, I've heard some complaints myself about city salaries. I think we don't have so many that I would declare that the city is top heavy just without doing a lot more research. What I would say though, is that we have a lot of community needs and community programs that to me don't look like they're funded enough. And so whether it comes from salaries or somewhere else, I will be looking for money for some of those things.
Okay, thank you. We'll start this next round with Mr. Crane. And someone has sent us a question online just now. What changes do you intend to initiate to help marginalized communities?
Please restate the question.
What changes do you intend to initiate to help marginalized communities?
Why would we want to marginalize communities? I don't understand.
No, to help the ones that are already marginalized.
All right, thank you. Thank you. That's better. I believe it means that everyone on staff, everyone on the council must be willing and understanding that all people who have questions, concerns must be equally heard, and that the value of everyone's questions is comparable. And if we have that mindset, I think we can achieve the goal.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
Yeah, great, amazing question. I find this really important. It's one of the reasons that I'm running. You know, once I get into the city council, I really want to find more ways. But as of right now, my plan really is community outreach. I feel that sometimes the community is left in the unknown because not enough is being put out there, and not a lot of opinions are being asked for. And I think that's important. We don't just need to expect our constituents to come to us. We need to ask opinions of our constituents. We need to open up our emails and our phone numbers and let them really come to us and let us know what we're doing that they can see.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos, yeah, if maybe we could solve his sound problem.
Thank you, Casey. Mr. Ramos, can you please sit a little closer to your microphone? We're having some difficulty hearing you. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay, Mr. Scalmanini.
Well, let me start by saying that I'm not sure what communities the question is referred to, but for starters, the most marginalized community in the city, I'm going to identify as the homeless. And when I say marginalized, they were more marginalized, you know, several months ago when the city moved the only local encampment out from where it is to wherever they ended up, and no one knows because no one tracks that. So, and I was the only person to oppose that because I think it's better to have them in one place than scattered all over the city, and it is more manageable in one location. And I think you asked for changes. One change is to have supervision, professional supervision at a campsite or a camp in place for the homeless. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
Well, two areas I've identified that I think would be, and I agree with Cameron that outreach is big. And I think having gone through the COVID experience and kind of how the county was slow to communicate with our Spanish-speaking community, that's something we can be doing in every area of city life, from recreation, social services on down. We should be doing a much better job at reaching everybody in terms of language. And then I also, think we should be streamlining certain types of permitting and making possible people to start little micro businesses in town and making that cheap and easy to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
¿Ya? Primeramente, es verdad, mi lucha siempre han sido los sin casa, los homeless. Por lo tanto, me gustaría investigar más, terminar de leer las 31 páginas que han escrito en su estudio y ver de qué manera podemos lograr que se construya un lugar enorme en donde albergue escuelas, área de servicio de clínicas, hospital mental e incluso una granja para que ellos puedan subsistir. First of all, I am very compromised with the homeless. We have been getting money that I would like to be seen as to be spent in buying a very large land to build a mental hospital, clinics, schools, gardens, and parks, and have the whole community, the homeless, in just one place where they will receive everything they need in order for us, everybody.
Time.
Okay, thank you. Now that the homeless situation has been brought up, let's dig a little bit into that. Let's see how you all feel about what the city is currently doing about the homeless and what you think they should be doing about the homeless. And we'll start this time with Mr. Ramos.
I think while the city is doing what it can, it's not enough, and the city does need to work better with the county and the county with the city. I think on both sides, and we do need to come with up with a plan that we can really move forward with, that's fiscally able to be done, and we can get the homeless situation the help that it needs, because obviously it hasn't been done yet, and we're trying. We're definitely trying, but it need to work.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini?
I've mentioned already then that I would like to see a professionally supervised location for the homeless to locate. There is a place in town for that that could be used, not where they were by the airport until June of this year. But I also think that would be convenient to provide the services that are so often mentioned by staff, is that these wraparound services that the homeless are supposed to get. Well, where are they supposed to get it? They're all over town now again. And that is the problem we began with and had for several years. So the second thing I'll mention is that there is an organization that's well known, the COC, for managing a lot of the homeless problem. But what they do is what they're limited into what they can do by what funding they get. And that's, they don't get funding for everything. So some of the needs are not addressed and will be in the future, and I'll be looking into some of those.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan?
Oh, sorry. I mean, just as a starting point, I do, I believe in that the homeless strategic plan that's just been drawn up by the county is a good and important first step. I also think we should take Some of the, for example, I notice our city police force having to deal with the homeless on a regular basis, and they spend a ton of time and money doing so. And I think whether we have ride-alongs with homeless support and mental health support services with the cops, or we move that job to those professionals entirely, I think that would be another good step as well.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
As I say, I would like to get the city and the county to work together to spend the $10 million that we already received to buy 330 acres of land, spend the 9 million resting for building more accessible places for them. Having them in just one place will be much better. They will have the vigilance, they will have everything they must need, including mental health. So, es mi opinión, tener un solo lugar podrá ayudar a los pobres jóvenes a estar localizados en un solo sitio para poder subsistir recibiendo trabajo, educación y ayuda mental que necesitan. Gracias.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
The continuum of care that Mr. Scalamanini spoke of is the vehicle that the city is primarily engaged with. The funding for homeless is primarily through the county. The services are primarily through the counties and a series of nonprofits. That continuum of care effort is working to coordinate efforts to reduce, in accordance with the Marbut study, reduce duplication and gaps. The homeless population is not monolithic. It is many groups, some who will stay with others and some who want to be on their own. That broad spectrum makes one spot not work.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question will start again at the beginning with Mr. Scalamanini. This one was just emailed to us. Let's see. How important do you feel is the improvement of broadband in the community, and should the city be involved in the extension and quality of the networks?
Well, the city should be involved as much as necessary to get better high-speed internet access. Now, I do not hear that as a complaint from people in the city. I hear it from a complaint. I hear it as a complaint outside the city. And actually, one time I've heard it from inside the city, and that was at the new dental office, orthodontics office that opened 4 years ago, I think it was. But that was the one time. So I don't assume that's high on the list for the city to deal with, but more important for the county to deal with in the rural areas. And there is a broadband coalition, and it's been working on the problem for years, but again, predominantly outside the city. So let me leave it there, because if there's some other particular urgency of the issue inside the city, I have not heard about that, or heard very little about it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donovan?
I just learned, I'll be honest, about the Broadband Coalition today. And I agree. I mean, this is primarily a rural issue. What I understand also is that while it'd be wonderful to bring broadband to the entire county, my understanding is the problem is cost. But that there are technologies around the corner where we're going to be able to have drones providing Wi-Fi. That was according to Mari Roden on the second supervisors debate on KZYX. And so, broadband's not necessarily in my department, but yeah, I would support any efforts to bring broadband to our rural parts of our county. If we can help in the city, that's great.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
Pienso que es importante que la ciudad se envuelva. Vivimos en un lugar rural. También estamos rodeados de montañas y de árboles que muchas veces no nos permiten estar en comunicación cuando se necesita, por ejemplo, con los fuegos, con algún accidente. Entonces es importante que la ciudad se envuelva, aún a pesar de los costos. I believe that this is very important the city can get involved because we live in a rural city. So I have heard that many kids right now do not have very good access to the internet. They are maybe failing behind in their class or maybe having a lot of trouble with that. So it will be so good if the city involves in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
There are quite a few technologies that are converging on rural America. One of the most interesting is Starlink, which is adding low Earth orbit satellites to the order of 60 to 120 a month, with a build out that will provide economical, very wide coverage. There are other technologies that will compete. The city resource to do that, what would it displace? If the city were to get into that business, what services would be displaced? Streets, police, fire. There's recent legislation that provides significant freedom for companies to put in
That's time. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ramos.
Yeah, I think that this is a very important thing for the city to be involved as they can be in it. I think especially with distance learning, which is currently happening, a lot of people are left without the internet accessibility that they need. And I also believe that health services, they all in school, when it's regularly back in session, it will all need a higher broadband internet, and especially as telephones, trains, and roadways were always really focused on internet access is the economic driver of the 21st century, and I think it's really important that we definitely focus on it here in the city.
Okay, thank you. The next round will start with Mr. Donovan. Someone would like to know how you see the legal cannabis industry fitting into the economic development of the city.
Well, how the legal cannabis, can you restate? I'm sorry.
Yes, how the legal cannabis industry fits into the economic development of the city.
Well, I think, countywide, we are right now, we've gotten so few people into the legal process that we're just not taking advantage of the tax potential of, of what legal cannabis could be. And I think if we're able to streamline that process, get a much higher percentage of the cannabis industry legal, and take up tax sharing between the city and the county, which seems to have, we've dropped the ball on since roughly 2014, then we can get a lot of more revenue for both the city and the county from legal cannabis. And that's what I support.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
En mi opinión, siento que necesitamos investigar más sobre cómo realmente está ayudando esta industria en nuestra localidad. Desafortunadamente veo más lo malo que lo bueno, y es mi opinión real. In my opinion, I feel that we should be researching more on this issue, because I don't really can see the positive advance or that the money is really coming. What I feel is that we are spending more money and going and saving the people who get in trouble on the mountains. We are spending more money with the police department. And so I would really like to see this industry to take charge and probably put more money to found the police or any
Next time.
agency.
Next time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crane.
City in recent years has done extensive work in terms of providing zoning and facilitating cannabis businesses within the city with an effort in protecting the neighborhoods, schools, and such. That has yielded some businesses. It may yield more over time in terms of grows. A small urban area is maybe not the best for grows, but there are rules that the city has established to accommodate those as well. So it's not something that has not been done. It is a work in progress. And it was discussed at the most recent council meeting again.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
Yeah, so this is definitely something I would definitely be interested in being a part of in streamlining the process through permits and everything within the city. I may be wrong, but I believe that there's only one dispensary within the city at the moment. And I believe that we can make it easier for more to come in and have that tax potential be higher, as Ed Donovan said. There was a reporting by New Frontiers that reported that 1 million jobs nationwide can be created by 2025. And I think we have the potential to add a lot of those jobs here within the city that would increase the tax revenue, that would increase the money that we have for our community. And I think that we need to really focus on that since the people have voted to implement it within our area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
Well, I see the legal cannabis business fitting into the city's economy as much as it can, given the guidelines that we've already set up. So similar to what Mr. Crane said a minute ago, the city's already created a structure and codes for where to put dispensaries. And there is one, at least, maybe two, there's two more that are on the books. One of them down on Cunningham Road area, part of town, and one of them at the end of Smith Street. And so how they'll do, I don't know, but the door's open and they're walking through it. So that's what the city's responsibility is to do, and we did it. That does not address growing. I'm not aware that indoor growing in the city is a particular issue. The suppliers for those outlets will likely be in the rural part of the county. Makes sense to me. But we are doing already what is appropriate for the business, and it'll subsequently grow if there's a market for it.
Okay, thank you. This next round will start with Ms. Duenas. How important is revenue sharing? Mr. Donovan brought that up in his previous answer. How important is revenue sharing between the county and the city, and why?
Pienso que si es necesario, debe ser compartido siempre y cuando haya una razón correcta, exacta, honesta. I believe this is important to share when there is a just, correct, and honest need to share the money. So I believe we have a lot of work to do with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
A distinction. There's tax sharing and there's revenue sharing. Tax sharing is a condition of annexation, property tax sharing. And over at least the last 8 years, the city and county have on again and off again discussed, efforted coming to agreement on a method. The method that was discussed extensively seemingly was too complicated. And now all of the cities are in discussion about a master approach through a master tax sharing agreement, a plan perhaps similar to that used in Sonoma County that will facilitate more logical tax sharing agreements in more timely fashion that will allow the cities to do annexations which are needed for them over time. The city of Ukiah being a prime example of that being a problem.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
I think that the tax sharing, as Mr. Crane was just touching on, is a very important thing that the county and the city really need to focus on to be able to increase the revenue that we can use to help with all of the things that we were discussing this evening. Obviously, the people we're representing are asking these questions because they want to see change, and so the sharing of the funds would be an amazing thing for the city and the county to come to a decision on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
Well, you've already heard how important tax sharing is, and it's a necessity for annexations in the future. So it brings us to a more strategic issue of, well, what do we want the city to look like in the future? How big do we want it to be? There is a ad hoc committee already created, and son of a gun, the two of us on the call this evening that are the incumbents are on that committee. And the issues that we'll be dealing with are issues related to what can happen with or what can happen with or without tax sharing. What can the city do? And so that issue is being addressed. I have sat in tax sharing meetings years ago. The question you asked here is, well, how important is it? Well, I have to say it's never been important enough for the city and the county to come to an agreement. They've never really had to. And so I think the importance of it is going to raise over the next 4 years, and I hope to be part of it.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
Yes, I like the way Steve just framed that, because I also favor annexation, with the exception of the Lover's Lane ag parcel, which I think was just against the wishes of the people of Ukiah overall, and it was prime ag land. But all the other potential annexations around town, I'm in favor of. And while Steve didn't quite reveal his vision, I'll reveal mine. I want the city to grow. I want the population to grow. I want it to grow more diverse. I want to build up from downtown outward. And yeah, I want to move Ukiah forward that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next round will start with Mr. Crane. There's considerable tension in various parts of the country over the Black Lives Matter movement and policing in general. Explain how you feel about the city of Ukiah's police department and what, if any, changes in policing in this community you think are necessary.
We are a backwater. We are not urban. We are not particularly the target of those wanting a major change in the society. So we don't seem to be a pawn in that fight. What the city police department has done over the decades, the thin blue line that we have, has served us very well. They have constantly changing requirements in terms of training, in terms of how the various issues that they face are to be dealt with. I believe that they're doing a good job and I believe they will continue to do so. I think it's essential that the citizens understand the difficulty in their lives to provide those services and respect what they do on behalf of the citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
So I first want to say that I completely, and with everyone in mourning the death of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and every other reason that this Black Lives Matter movement has moved forward. I think that the police department here within Ukiah has done a great, within days, they mentioned that they were developing the 8 Can't, or not developing, but inheriting the 8 Can't Wait campaign. That was a big part at the beginning of this movement. And it was just 8 things that any police department across the country can do that will lower the chances of unnecessary deaths. And I think that we can be a part of helping our police, offloading, as Mr. Donovan mentioned earlier, offloading mental health cases and, adding more resources. That way our police don't have to handle as much. But I think that they're doing a great job as well.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
Well, first, let me start by simply making it clear that I support the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it makes sense, something that's been coming for not just many years, but many decades and even generations in this country. Here in Ukiah, I am confident in saying our police department has excellent credibility with the public. It's also true that the police department has expressed, and police chief has expressed that he doesn't want his force to be the mental health response organization for the city. And I agree with that, by the way. So there is a need still to have some kind of force to deal with, or organization to deal with mental health emergencies. But, and lastly, I will say just on the other side of the issue, the last time I'm aware that an event happened in the city that was worthy of possibly national attention for a Black Lives Matter type issue, that was 21 years ago. There was an actual death in the city. I won't go into detail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, well, I agree with Steve. This is an issue. This is an issue that's been around for generations. I grew up in Cincinnati, and I studied law and order and the Black Power movement there. And there were race riots there in 2001, and there, and so Black Lives Matter is. Not only do I support it, but Black Lives Matter and anti-racism are a core part of my being. For decades, been a part of my life. And I do agree, we've had a proactive response to the Ukiah Police Department, but I still believe in strong community oversight. I do also believe in ending qualified immunity for police officers nationwide. And I believe in equality and justice for all people, period.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
Estoy de acuerdo con el compañero anterior. Siento que aunque nuestro pueblo es un lugar muy pequeño, pero a nivel nacional hemos estado viendo las atrocidades cometidas en contra de nuestros hermanos de color, es importante que nosotros vayamos educándonos también para ver de qué manera podemos ayudar a estas personas, porque son también seres humanos. I believe that even when this problem is not being arising here in our city, because this is very small, in the country, we have been saying a lot of atrocities against our brothers of color. I am a Latino, and I feel that my brothers need respect from everybody, not only from the police, but from everybody. I believe that our
Thank you. All right, the next question, we'll start with Mr. Ramos. What is your impression of the current relationship between the city and its local businesses?
I think that recently, currently during this pandemic, the relationship has been very edgy between the local businesses and the city. And I think that moving forward, we can repair that relationship between them as long as we go forward, allowing them to make their money in the safest way possible, and allow our businesses to flourish the way that we need them to flourish to be able to have our town to flourish as well.
Thank you. Mr. Scamanini?
I believe you're muted.
Okay, apologies. Looks like a bad habit of mine this evening. I am not an expert at the relationship between businesses and the city. I believe that we've set up, the code system set up, and the city has been flexible in enabling businesses, specifically new businesses, over the several years that I've been on the council. I refer to the wool processing business that the city was flexible on permitting over on Orchard Avenue. The cannabis businesses that are permitted, and they'll be opening sometime next year, I imagine. But unfortunately, the economy and forces way out of influence from the city are affecting the overall economy right now. And that is a trend which is unfortunate, and I'm sure it's creating stress for businesses. I just hope that businesses recognize us as doing what we can for them.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the city has done some, tried to take some limited steps to help out during this time by streamlining permits and quick turnarounds, and I believe waived fees. And honestly, any city is in a tough spot in the relationship with the business in this environment. But I think on the other side, I do feel, while Steve mentioned flexibility, I think there's room for a lot more flexibility. And I'm just going to give you one example, and that's Alex Thomas Plaza. We have the farmers market there on Saturday, and during the week, we have a monopoly of a hot dog salesman 5 days a week in Alex Thomas Plaza, and a bunch of homeless people hanging out there. And so why don't we take that stretch of School Street where we have the farmers market and permit, say, 4 food trucks and maybe a couple eloteros, and have a food scene there every week where people can come for lunch, and permit 6 small businesses in a very, in a great space, a central space. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas?
Pienso que la ciudad está haciendo más o menos su trabajo. La verdad es muy accesible en cuanto a que ayudan un poco con orientación para poder llenar los formatos. Yo estoy muy feliz con eso, pero siento que es muy importante que su personal, al menos el personal que tienen al frente, sea bilingüe. I believe that the city is doing so. I am really happy because they have people there helping. But I also believe that at least at the front lines, you must have bilingual people because there is a problem with communication. Also, I second the idea of the previous person. Why only one person is selling at the plaza? I have been just trying to help many other people to go and open a business for food vendors. My idea is to use the railroad full of food vendors, at least just on Sundays. That will be a good idea with music and mariachis. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
The city offers business assistance through a series of partners, public-private partnership. The assistant city manager, the deputy city manager, is on point for that. There are a lot of other people on city staff that can be contacted and help people sort through what needs to be done to open a business, but assistance is available and it's fairly considerable. The the issue of food, any food sales operation is also under county health standards. And sometimes the impediment is from the agency that actually is in charge of that. So it's like they say, it's complicated. There are many hands in the pot and in terms of regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will start with Mr. Scalmanini. How do you suspect the city is going to have to deal with the strain on resources and budget caused by COVID-19?
Well, fortunately, we have a good relationship with the city manager and the department heads to deal with these kinds of issues. You said how? Well, it's happened before. There's already been some people that are retired early. There were a few layoffs that happened in the last, it's been 5 months or so. And there may be more of that. The last time we went through a problem like this was the recession, and it's going back to 2012 or 13 or something like around that time. And the city manager at that time, we had to have cutbacks. I think it was 5 or 10% cuts in salary for a period of time. If that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. The alternative in these days and in this economy is no work at all, which I don't recommend. So we will adjust as necessary. It's happened before, and I certainly think we can do it again as needed.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan?
Right, I agree. The place to start are salaries, and it's really unfortunate. Hopefully we can get some retirements and other ways to not, or to cut less for the people who are going to continue working. We're also, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to look at every aspect of the city budget, and you know, and make some tough choices. It's going to be, it is going to be difficult, but I think if we're creative and we can come up with some low budget solutions to fill some needs that that we couldn't, that we can't fund the normal way, I think we can do that. I think we just have to be positive, we have to be creative, and we have to and make some hard choices.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
También estoy de acuerdo en que debemos hacer un estudio acerca de los sueldos, acerca de los gastos, probablemente deshacernos de todo ese tipo de autos o de cosas que realmente no están siendo necesarios, gastos extra, ¿verdad? Hay que buscarle por ahí, pero también crear quizás algún negocio, quizás con todo eso que se obtiene de la marihuana ilegal, quizás volverlo legal, o sea, dentro del contexto del gobierno para poder recaudar fondos. I believe that is true. We have to look at the salaries of the people, probably make more records, but also look at the industry of the cannabis, especially the one that is illegal. When we get everything from them, probably our government can create one factory or something.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
All right, the city budget consists of many parts. Some are general fund, some are enterprise funds, some are taxes for streets, taxes for public safety, and then there are funds that come periodically from the outside, from grants or low-cost loans to achieve other things. The city's policy established by the council is that the city operates its general fund with a reserve of 25% or more in order to have a cushion, in order to have time to change course, to figure out what has to be done to deal with the reduction in revenue, what won't be done or must be deferred, and what people may need to leave. It is very actively done, and it's being done, I believe, appropriately and reasonably thoroughly.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
According to a 2020 survey of the U.S. Conferences of Mayors and National League of Cities, 88% of municipalities are anticipating a painful reduction in the revenue this year. And I think the economic downturn is going to hit most forms of revenue, but I think that the city really needs to go over the city budget with a magnifying glass before they consider cutting salaries and really find money where we can that is going to help the city flourish after this COVID pandemic. The marijuana industry has already been mentioned. I think that there's places that we can find the money because you don't want to be cutting the salaries during the times that we're facing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scalmanini. Oh, no, I think you already answered. Okay,
Yes.
we're going to go on to the next one. This one will start with Mr. Donovan. Is there anything the city can be doing to be a better partner with the senior center or address senior needs in the community?
You know, I'd love to see some sort of way to have an official liaison with the senior center. Maybe we do have that already. I actually wouldn't know that. But what I see there are, at the senior center is, a pretty good facility and a commercial kitchen, right? And I just feel like we can be reaching out and, whether it's music or events and just trying to come up with, and these are going to have to be low budget ways. I mean, we're not going to dramatically increase funding for anything probably over the next couple of years. And that's what I mean by being creative, coming up with low cost ways to provide community services. And I think there are ways to do that for seniors and other groups as well.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
Creo que están tratando de hacerlo bien hasta el momento, aunque en mi experiencia con los ancianos veo que necesitan mucha ayuda para transportarse, mucha ayuda para traducir a la hora de ir al doctor, bastante ayuda para acarrear cosas, por ejemplo, como la comida del banco de comida. Y pienso que ellos de verdad necesitan gran ayuda de parte de voluntarios más que nada para poder seguir adelante. Okay, I believe that they need a lot of help, especially volunteerism. They are very old, they cannot carry heavy things. They also need people who can be bilingual there to help with the whole community. And I guess overall the city is doing okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crane.
Should devote funding to the senior center. I am not in agreement with that because it would mean displacing other things. And to me, the city's function is about keeping the lights on, making sure that we have water, sewer that works. The senior center is locally funded. It's doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
I would say that we need to get creative. Everything that we have here, could be considered to be built on the back of these seniors. And so the outreach to make sure that they're taken care of is very important. And I agree that we may not have, especially within the coming years, we may not have all of the funding to be able to do everything that we want for them. But even if we can find the slightest amount, it needs to be devoted towards them, and we need to take care of it.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
Let me make 2 points. First of all, I'm not sure how much help the senior center needs right now, because it was in the news the last few weeks that they're planning to move and build an entire new location, or new building up in the Brush Street Triangle area, I believe it was. So they must be doing something right, and they must have some funding to do it. That was a surprise to me, but good for them. Although I'll miss them being a little closer to the downtown area, but apparently it works for them to be that little further away. But number two doesn't involve the senior center, but it does involve seniors. And I hope I'm not being too repetitious on the issue that's come up before tonight, and I've mentioned, but that is that why don't we give seniors the same break on garbage rates we used to give them? This was a bunch of BS that came along 3 years ago that was never believable. I've demonstrated it's not believable because other counties don't do what we do. But anyway, that is what I will bring up again when it comes up. I think it's a couple years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will start with Ms. Dueñas. Should an evacuation siren be installed to alert folks in case of fire or other emergencies in the city?
Sorry, the question.
You're muted. You are muted.
Para mí.
Sí.
Ok, perdón. Pienso que sí sería buena idea. Claro que no sé qué tan grande sería el range, ¿verdad? Pero al menos alertaría bastante a la comunidad. I believe that will be a good idea to alert people, to make sure that something is going on. I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
The city used to have an annunciation system, which was removed about 2 decades ago. It's a technology that has lost favor, and there are people who would not benefit from it. I would need to look at it from a standpoint of what's it cost, and try and understand what the benefit of that expenditure would be, and understand what it would displace.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos?
I would agree with that. I think that we would definitely have to look into what the cost would be and where we would get those funds from. But I do think that it is a great idea. And I do think that we definitely should look into it. There's other forms of emergency help that we can place around the city, like the blue light telephone poles that we see going up around the country. And I think that those are also a great idea to really look into. They're placed in high public areas where you can press a button and it automatically alerts the police to issues happening in the area. And I think that those are also something that we can definitely look into along with the siren to increase public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini?
Here I go again. Okay, I'm unmuted. I'll make a couple of comments. First of all, my compliments to whoever asked the question, because this sounds like an inexpensive thing to do that would be helpful for the public. I remember sirens from, the sirens when I was a kid, 11 o'clock on one Friday of the month or something like that, and that was the norm. Well, we've learned, 3 years ago, 2018, the Redwood Valley fire, how important that would have been. Because people didn't know to pay attention. People didn't know to turn on a damn radio and listen to what's going on. By coincidence, I was listening to the local radio when that fire started. I heard the first announcement of it, that there was something going on. They didn't know what yet, but there was some report of a fire in the Potter Valley area. It wasn't known that it was heading for Redwood Valley yet. Anyway, a siren or a few sirens in the city to tell people, tune into the radio and listen, there's something important going on, makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan?
Yes, absolutely. I support the siren. Thanks.
Short and sweet. Okay, the next questions, we're going to start with Mr. Crane. With the changes in State Street getting mixed reviews from city residents, do you think the city does enough to involve residents in major projects?
Outreach and a great deal of public participation on several occasions. I think in that regard, a very decent job was done. I was somewhat disappointed in the way the project was modified after the public output, in part to reduce cost and in part to improve public safety because of concerns the fire department raised about blocking traffic, emergency traffic. But on the whole, I think the city did a very good job with that communication.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos.
I've heard that there were plenty of opportunities for the public to be included into the State Street decision. And I would like to personally thank Mo Mulhern, because somebody who's very prominent on social media, which is the new age way of getting out information to our local residents and constituents. And I think that she did a really good job of making it known. But I think that the city did as much as it could to make sure that our residents were involved in the decision.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
For starters, the claim's been made many times by staff that this will be an improvement in traffic flow. And I certainly hope it is, or it will be. However, let me say for the record, and let me say to any staff that were involved that are listening, this project may be a you bet your career moment. Because if it doesn't work out and the traffic is seen by the public as worse, it's gonna be hurting for a long, long time. So, but I hope it works. I hope the claims they made are true. Secondly, let me mention, you asked, was the public involved enough? Well, I think it was involved pretty well. My concern that I brought up in one of the meetings was that the staff was not involved. The fire department and the public safety department did not know what the design was when it came for approval the first time. And it was yours truly that asked the questions about it and eventually took the issue to public safety, and they worked out the problems that it had. That was the raised media.
Time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I think, you know, I guess I'm like Cameron. I tend to get a lot of my city news from Maureen Mulhern. I do follow enough that I do believe that the city gave ample opportunities for people to come forward and make comments on the project as it was going. But that said, there's definitely a perception out there that people, you know, kind of had the wool pulled over their eyes. And while I don't agree with that, I do think we need to, I mean, it's not worth debating whether we're going to do it or anymore. What we need to do is capitalize on what it is, maximize the improvements it can potentially make, promote it, and make downtown more walkable. That is one of my core issues, making the city more walkable. The more walkable it is, the more time people spend time and money in Ukiah.
Estoy de acuerdo con lo que han dicho los demás. Honestamente, he recibido muchísima información por parte de quien yo considero la única integrante del concilio actual que está trabajando demasiado por la comunidad, y ella es Mo. Gracias a ella, a sus posts y a sus mensajes y contestaciones, estamos al día de lo que está ocurriendo. Desafortunadamente, demasiado tarde. El problema es, esas juntas en el concilio deben de ser bilingües. I believe that there is a problem of communication. The only one person I see very involved in the community from the city council is Mo. Thanks to her, we know everything about what is going on. So my thinking is, before we do something, we have to do bilingual meeting so that the people can be informed. Thank you so much.
Casey, I believe you're muted.
Sorry. The next round will start with Mr. Ramos. If the city received a multi-million-dollar grant that they could use in any way they want, what would you do with it?
Very easy. Housing. I think that we are in the midst, especially in California as a whole, in a housing crisis, and I think that we need more housing to be able to place our residents and also welcome new residents so we can see our city grow and flourish the way that it should.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini?
Steve, you're muted.
When I'm hot, I'm hot. So I certainly agree that some of that money should be put into housing and matching grants that are available for building housing. The other thing I would put that into involves the project that is underway in a ad hoc committee that is looking into the energy production and storage of the city to be done locally, so that we can avoid the problems with the public safety power shutoffs, and also stand on our own 2 feet locally more for energy generation and usage, storage and usage. That's going to be expensive, but that is one of the things I would pursue with multi-million dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan?
I agree with if we could find a way. I mean, I don't know how many millions we're talking about here, but I think getting Ukiah to an independent energy grid would be an amazing goal. If the millions are, probably more realistic, if we're just getting several million, I mean, I would pour money into funding community. I would pour money into our parks. I'd build more community gardens. I'd build an urban, food forest if I could. I'd create more places for people to come together in public in the future. We need to be able to come together more as a community in the wake of this pandemic. And so I'll be funding community with those special millions. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas?
Si hubiera la posibilidad de tener millones de dólares, compraría 500 acres para poder crear un centro comunitario para los jóvenes, hacer viviendas accesibles, especialmente ecológicas, utilizando el plástico reciclable y cemento. Ese sería mi aim, aparte de hacer mejor comunicación. If we were going to have a lot of money, I would like to spend it in buying a big land to create a very specific place for the homeless, using the plastic and cement for more sustainable houses for them, employing them in building their houses, paying them even for living in there. So that will be a great accomplishment, just to focus first on what we are failing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
Substantial, quite a few tens of millions of dollars of pension liability for the public employees retirement system. That's currently being charged at 7% interest. If we were to receive some millions of dollars today, that would be the place I would be most interested in putting it today. The city is efforting reducing that liability cost by bonding that pension liability, or a significant portion of it, 80% of it. But the other place that I would like to put that sort of money is towards the resiliency of the electrical system, which includes storage and some local production. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This next round will start with Mr. Scalmanini. Water, important to the future of the city. What solutions do you see to ensure water for the next century?
Steve, you're muted.
Okay, that first word was, well, I have to, in all honesty, question the validity of the question. The city is in fantastic shape for water for the future. Absolutely fantastic shape. It is the rural areas outside the city that have to worry about water. But in the last few years, what's 2 years, maybe 3, but I think it's even been just 2 years, we've done the recycled water project. We've done 2 new wells that are for groundwater, not for underflow. So we're looking great. You know, the issue is how many other people want to get the hand on that? And how can we use water to enhance some of the annexations we are, because we have the water to serve people. So what's the future going to be? But we're in good shape.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, I manage the Vinewood Park Community Garden, and we spend more money than we take in on water every year. And getting the purple pipe to Vinewood has promised to turn the budget of my community garden around. I'm a big supporter of the recycled water project. The one other water issue I would mention is that I think City Ukiah is one of the agencies involved right in the Potter Valley project. And while we don't necessarily have major water issues within the city limits, we are part of the region, and we're part of securing the future of the region's water. And I do support that project. If there's a way to secure the flow of water for the region while doing great stuff for the salmon with the smaller dam, I approve of that as well. But I believe water for us comes first. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas?
Una cosa que noto entre nosotros es que nadie habla acerca del cambio climático tan importante y el cómo tener que aprender a reciclar el agua de las lluvias. Es importantísimo enforzar eso en nuestra ciudad en caso de incendios para poderlo utilizar y también para poder guardar el agua para nuestros jardines o nuestros céspedes. Something I haven't seen today is anybody speaking about the climatic change. This is very important to learn how to recycle the rainwater in the cities and everywhere, just in case we need it. It should be a good way to help with the lawn, with the gardens, and in cases when there is one pyro in the city or out from the city. I would like the people right now to address the climatic change, please. That's important for me.
Time.
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
Doug, you're muted.
Thank you. The city has excellent water rights, both with pre-1914 and 1949, which is part of the Lake Mendocino project. The city has offered water agencies around the city to assist them in the harvesting of water and or providing them with water for fee. It is a key component. We need more area in the city. We have the water to serve it, which would take pressure off of the other agencies around the city to provide water. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos?
Yeah, I would like to say that I'm also a really large supporter of the purple pipe and the recycled water. I think that, you know, if what it sounds like, we're pretty well off with what we have. I think that there's always the opportunity to see something better, to continuously develop. And I think that Josefina's right when she talks about climate change, and maybe something we can focus on is keeping our waterways, a lot cleaner. I myself take my dog down to the rivers very often, and I see that the waterways within the city are pretty dirty, and I pick up about a bag of trash every time. So I would say that maybe we can focus a lot on that and making sure our waterways stay as clean as possible.
Okay, thank you. The next round of questioning will start with Mr. Donovan. Describe what kinds of businesses you would like to see come to town and the kind of businesses you do not want to see coming to town.
Well, business. I mean, I think we've begun the process of bringing legal cannabis into the city. I do support that. Although I wouldn't say that's my favorite type of business coming in the city. I think we need to we need a more diverse downtown. So we need to be encouraging people from different backgrounds and different income levels. We need to streamline the permitting process. But in terms of types of businesses, I think we need to diversify. We need all kinds of things downtown. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
Pienso que necesitamos darle más oportunidad a las madres en casa para que puedan tener esa posibilidad de poder crear negocios en los cuales puedan ayudar más a sus familias. Me gustaría en el Railroad ver cientos de vendedores ambulantes ofreciendo todo lo que su cultura puede ofrecer al público. I would like to see many people on the railroads, street vendors, selling all the foods from their cultures so that we can get more people involved in the community to get to know each other and just to increase that ability to communicate, to be just one happy town here. So I don't know how we can do that, but I would like to research about that. Sorry for my speech. You all know I am deaf. I'm trying hard.
No worries. We're understanding you just fine. Mr. Crane.
Value added businesses would be my first choice because they help make up for the money that we ship away for the things that we buy from other places. So it builds tax base and it helps provide a more sustainable economy. The sort of things I wouldn't like to see are those that maximize the export of the local resources, the local dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos.
I would really personally love to see the businesses that create a lot of job opportunities within our city. I think that we need to really focus and protect our local mom and pop in downtown. But while doing so, we need to definitely diversify the amount of businesses that we have here and understand that not everybody's at the economic ability to be able to afford the of small town business. And so we need to be able to provide them a place to shop as well.
Thank you, Mr. Scalmanini.
Let me start by saying I'm unmuted. And number two, I do not have a particular bias about what kind of businesses to try to draw here. I am a believer in the idea that I've heard sometimes, not as often as I'd like to, that our future is in businesses that are either already here or that are going to start here in the coming years, and help them grow. It's not about bringing new ones in here. It's about growing ones we have or that people want to start. Now, we have done some encouragement. Some of that, for example, the medical business is associated with the hospital. That's been a growth. Our tourism is the biggest growth business. You may know for the last several years, the biggest income growth for the city has been tourism businesses. But, you know, I believe in just set the rules up and let the market happen, and people will create businesses where there's market niches, and that's the way it ought to be.
Okay, thank you. We have gone over time and had some great questions and great answers. So we're going to wrap it up now and allow you all to have your 1-minute closing statement. And because we started with Mr. Scalmanini at the beginning, we're going to go in the opposite direction, and we're going to start with Mr. Ramos. Please give us your closing statement.
I would definitely like to close out to just mention, reiterate the fact that I'm doing this because I feel that people in my generation, the younger crowd, feel as though even local government is very hard to participate in, and I want to show them that it's not true. We can participate, we can be here, we can have our voices heard as well, along with every other underrepresented group, and make sure that we as a community are reaching out to every single person that we can to help out.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Crane.
Doug, you are muted.
This is my 16th year on the council. I seek an additional 4 years. There are a lot of things that I have helped change. I want to see those things more firmly baked in, budgeting, reaching ahead on planning, looking for the highest value for the expenditure, constantly improving the systems and the tool set. So that's why I seek the additional 4 years. I have a lot of experience and want to continue to use it for the citizens' benefit.
Thank you. Ms. Dueñas.
Bueno, quiero dar las gracias a toda la gente maravillosa que ha estado escuchando. Gracias por su paciencia. Quiero dar el mensaje de que no importa que seas una persona discapacitada, sorda, mutilada, como quiera que seas, mientras tengas tu cerebro y lo puedas usar bien, siempre hay que aventarse, hay que salir adelante. Gracias por todo eso. I would like to say thank you very much for all the help and all the patience you have had just up today. I want to motivate the people out there who are disabled like me to just go for it, no matter what. Go for it. You can do it. You can do it. Sí se puede.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
Should I go before Steve or?
Yes, go ahead. We're going the opposite direction.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I am. I'm running for some of the opposite reasons, I guess, of Mr. Crane. I mean, I'm running as a fresh perspective. I've only been living here in town 5 years, but I've lived in some communities that are very successful, and I have a lot of hustle and a lot of desire to make the city a better place. And what I hear is a little bit of defeat, that the city's just here to keep the lights on. And I don't believe that. I have hope of making this a better community, a stronger community, and a community that's better, that has better funded programs and more for everybody. Equality and access for all Ukiahans to city life. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Scalmanini.
With the voter support, I intend to continue as I have been to keep the public informed of what's really going on and alternative ideas that are not being considered by city staff, and questioning what needs to be questioned so that we understand what plans are for any particular project or proposal that comes our way. And I will bring that kind of expertise if voters willing for another 4 years. You can read some of my comments on issues at my website. That is scalmanini-2020.com. And if you want to reach me, my email address is scalmanini@yahoo.com. S is two S's for that, only one for the web page, scalmanini-2020.com. I look forward to serving you if you'll have me, and I would appreciate your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you to all the candidates that came on and did this 2020 version of the City Hall Forum. It was a great pleasure to listen to all of you. Thank you for the audience and all the great questions that got sent in to us. Thank you to the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition and the American Association of University Women who helped co-host this, and especially to the Mendocino Voice, which joined us, and Adrienne Bauman, who did such a spectacular job getting all the technical things done and making sure that our timing was correct and that we got on the air at all. I'm Casey Meadows. I'm the editor of the Ukiah Daily Journal, and this has been a City Council Forum. And we want you all to, no matter who you're going to vote for, make sure you go out and vote in November. Good night.
One quick reminder before we sign off, there will be a District 2 Supervisors Forum held on October 19th with Maureen Mulhern and Mari Roden. It had to be postponed. And so we will be having that District 2 Supervisors Forum on October 19th. Thank you to Casey. Thank you to all the candidates, and good night.